What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new show here on Shared Screens. Today we have the very first episode of the Shared Screens Elite Four. If you didn't see our announcement video, this is our brand new Pokemon exclusive show. Now, there's so much to talk about Pokemon, from what's going on with the cards, from what's going on with the shows, from what's going on with the games and the DLC. But within this show, we have a second show, a very special idea called The Road to Victory. The road to victory is the four of us, me and my fellow co-hosts, Alec Bobko, Chris Rumblepack92, LePack, and Austin J. Ernst, coming together and trying to find what is the perfect Pokemon game. And the way we plan on doing that is by going through a bunch of people's dream Pokemon game, then coming together at the end, seeing what people have in common, what the consensus seems to be, and then putting it all together and making the best Pokemon game. So if you are somebody that has a dream Pokemon game or know somebody that has a dream Pokemon game, make sure you message us on Twitter or email us or get in contact through any of our social medias that are in the description down below so you can be on as we take this giant survey in front of the world. So guys, of course, this is our first episode. Things might change from here on out. We're still working out kinks. This is a pilot, but we are starting with our dream games. But before we do that, with every episode, we are going to be going through some Pokemon icebreakers to get to know ourselves and our guests a little bit better. So today I have three very, I think, easy but important ones that will explain a lot about who we are to our audience. I want to know what your first Pokemon game was, what your favorite region is, and who your favorite Pokemon is.
Oh, I love
now,
it.
Region can be debated as to whether you mean the actual objective story in that region, or region can mean generation. That's what I love about some of these questions is they're very open-ended and open to interpretation, and that shows who we are as people. So Alec, let's start with you.
All right, my first Pokemon game was actually Pokemon Silver. I didn't have a Game Boy. My first Game Boy was actually a Game Boy Advance, so I wasn't able to play the originals until way later. But family friend of ours, is kind of getting to that age of getting out of Pokemon, so to speak, and he basically gave me his copies of Gold and Silver, and I like Pokemon the movie 2000, so I went with Pokemon Silver.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Who doesn't? The GOAT, right? Dude.
So, oh yeah. So yeah, but with Silver, put 100+ hours into that cartridge and loved every second of it. And then as far as favorite region, that's a tough one. If I had to go with just my gut instinct, no thinking, just drop of a hat, I'd probably have to go with Hoenn, just because I've probably played Gen 3 and like the Gen 6 remakes of it the most.
I was gonna say because you've been hoeing.
Hey, this dude fucks.
I'm sorry.
Too much water.
7.5.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just always such a well-designed region in my mind. Like, so you have kind of crossing paths. You go all over the place. It has a lot of different geographic locations, and just the soundtrack to Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald is just one of the best.
To quote Jason Derulo, "In the trumpets they go."
It's like Ruby Sapphire. It's real duty in the sound. A lot of doots in the soundtrack.
Oh
yeah.
Let me tell you, it makes for some good just listening when you're like working on stuff in the background. Just real good, feel good kind of music.
Yeah. And who's your favorite Pokemon?
I gotta go with my boy Rhydon. Like, dude, it's just such a clean design, and it's like
Rhydon D's nuts. Am I right?
Oh man, I thought mine was bad. Jesus.
They also missed a perfect pun in X and Y because you could ride the Rhyhorns. They said Rhydon.
True.
Got him.
But yeah. So, but yeah, Rhydon. It's like, I just love how clean that design is, and it's like it had nothing to do with being like the first Pokemon designed or whatever. It's just I don't know, something about him. Just, and like, it's one of those, like, he can be fierce, but then also you see in some of the anime episodes, he's just a cool dude.
He's just a little guy.
He's just a little guy.
Little fella.
Is he pretty big?
I don't know, man. We
I
could do a
mean-
whole episode on the sizes that don't make sense.
I picture him as
Yeah.
like at least 4 foot. or
Rhydon's pretty
something.
large.
Yeah.
He
Rhydon's
is. He
pretty large,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. How about you? First game, favorite region, favorite Pokemans.
I still own my very first
6'3" for
Pokemon
Rhydon.
game. Oh, so
Hey, yo, he's over
tall
6
guy,
foot.
big guy, big
Yeah.
guy.
But still, he's got the little little guy energy sometimes.
He's got the little guy energy, bro. He's scrappy. I am an old man. In fact, as of the recording of this, I turned 31 last week. So I have been a day one Pokemon Red boy. All right, I've still got my OG. I've got my Game Boy Color. Right. My very first game ever was Pokemon Red. I got to play it like a month after it hit the States. I was right there from the start. Favorite region is a tough one. I think because Red and Blue and Yellow were my first games. I have a lot of love for Kanto, for the OGs, right? Being an old man, it's hard to beat like the 151. That said, I also love Johto a lot. I love especially in the Heart Gold Soul Silver remakes, like how like traditional Japan it feels. There's a lot of like that old school like ancient Japan architecture there that I think is really cool and vibes with it a lot. I also got to jump on Hoenn as well. I love the tropical vibes. That one's a little special because Ruby and Sapphire were also like the games I got my siblings into once they were able like to read and able to play video games, and so I've got that attachment there. But it's you can't make me pick between those three, dude. They're all so good, if I'm going with my gut, probably Johto. I gotta say Johto. It's too cool.
Mhm.
It's too cool, man.
The train.
Especially and I think a big part of that is like Pokemon 2000 as well. Just because I love Lugia so much, and like I played Silver first, and so like surfing out to the Whirl Islands, it's like I wanted like the 3 islands from the movie to be in the game so bad.
Boy, do I have a game for you. I'll have to link you to this Did you know gaming video later.
Yeah, please do. As far as favorite Pokemon, that's another really, really hard one because I have a few. I'll always, as a basic bitch Pokemon Red boy, Charmander was my first Pokemon. Charizard is cool. I don't care if it's the basic answer or not. Charizard is rad, and you can't take that away. Mewtwo I also love a ton. Especially you got the movie, like him just being like the most blatantly overpowered thing in the original games.
But
right?
that's what was fun.
That's what made it. That's what made him awesome, right? And so I've always loved that.
He has the hardest quote where it's like your destiny, whatever, the destiny quote or whatever.
The circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you truly are. Represent.
Yeah,
He
had it on lock. He had it fucking in the chamber.
It's a hard ass.
And that's why he's the host.
Take a bow.
If you were to take away kind of like my basic like 10-year-old boy answers though, Machamp is one of my all-time favorites as well. I mean, four arms, jacked as hell. I love fighting types. They're all really cool, and Machamp is just rad. He's kind of like Goro from Mortal Kombat, but he's a Pokemon, and I love that.
His ability is cool too. The no guard, where basically all his moves hit, but then every move hits against him too.
So good. Oh yeah, it's absolutely it's like you're gonna take it's just the idea of recreating that thing. It was like we're fighting, dude. Like we're fighting. I'm gonna land on my blows and like. I just recently saw this comment too, where like this Machamp is fighting a Gengar, and the Gengar is like, "Haha, your punches don't work on me." He's like, "What if I do them really fast?" He's like, "Why does that make a difference?" Like Machamp used Bullet Punch, and it hits the Gengar in the face.
Nice.
So yeah, shout out to Machamp.
Shout out to Machamp. And Austin, what about you?
My favorite region is easily Johto. My favorite game is Gold. So like it's just one of those things. That's what I grew up with. My first game was actually Red, which is weird. I think when I first played Red, I don't know how old I was, but I could not have been very old. So I think I just didn't get it. Like I think I was just running around doing things. There was words on screen, and I was like, "The fuck is happening?" So then I just bounced, and then I had to wait a few years before I had a brain between my ears and I could actually read things. So my first game was Red. My favorite game is Gold. It's in my top 3 of all time is Gold. And I have, which is weird because I've never played Heart Gold. I just started kind of playing it recently, but
Oh, seriously?
yeah, you guys knew about that.
Yeah, remember we were roasting him because
I picked
Oh yeah, that
Chikorita.
sounds right. Oh yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Because I've never picked at him. Okay, I understand he's the hardest one. I get it.
Not just the hardest, but also the
it's
worst.
objectively the worst. Yeah, you have a disadvantage for the first 2 gyms.
Like I said, I played through Gold so many times with Cyndaquil and Totodile, but I've never done it with Chikorita. So I was like,
Yeah.
I might as well just bite the bullet and do it. So yeah, region. My favorite Pokemon, without trying to go too long, is like I have a few. I feel like Butterfree is like my go-to answer simply because one, I don't think a lot of people choose Butterfree, and I think that's kind of lame. And I just kind of like representing my boy there. But the reason I like Butterfree so much is because of the episode, and I think you know what I'm
Yep.
talking about.
Bye
It's
Bye
called
Butterfree.
Bye Butterfree.
It
Yep.
was like it's one of the first like childhood little young Austin like just crying at a TV screen and not really understanding my feelings. You know what I mean? And it was a
100%.
genuinely like eye-opening thing for me, and I was like, and now anytime I ever see like a Butterfree with like a scarf on it, I know what reference it is or like the yellow scarf or whatever, and I'm
Just
like,
start
no.
weeping.
It just comes, it all comes back, man. Every time.
They missed a golden opportunity not to make that the pink Butterfree the shiny.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's weird that it's not.
Yeah, you're right. Is it the light blue one? Is that what the shiny is, or I don't remember what the shiny?
it's a different. I don't know because it's the first shiny I ever found naturally in a Pokemon game that wasn't Pokemon Go. It's the body is like a slightly darker blue, and then the eyes are green, which is it's also like the only one of the only Pokemon I've ever purposely nicknamed.
I don't do shinies, so it's just not.
If I come across them, hey, like I'm not gonna say no, but I don't shiny hunt.
I get that. Yeah, I don't do it either.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Butterfree is like probably my number 1 go-to, and I think that's the one I would stick with, which is weird because like I think about butterflies in real life and they do nothing for me, so I'm just like, all right. This one's massive. Which
Animals would all be
terrifying.
better if they were as animated as Pokemon.
It's true. But like my other answers are Charizard was like an honorable mention for me because he's just dope as shit and he's an OG. He's an OG guy. Absol.
He just looks cool. He just is cool. It's hard to beat that, you know.
Yeah,
I feel like I have the same argument for Absol. Like he's like
Also looks
cool.
the disaster
Yeah.
Pokemon. He's
I was
really
say
trying
just
to
gonna
save
bring that up too.
just like me for real.
And then I remember really liking when I was younger, not so much anymore, but like it still holds a special place for me. Is Caesar?
Yeah,
Caesar
Yeah,
rolls.
Scizor is in my top 3, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Caesar's
Possibly
really,
top
really
2.
Cool. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's how I say it.
I say Scizor personally, but
But it's just, I mean, if I say that, you know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Caesar.
The dude that you put a
Butterfree.
little bit of fire on and he dies.
Yeah,
The
he's
tiniest bit.
the one little, pretty large weakness there. But Absol and Butterfree are probably my go-to. But I like
Nice.
evolutions wise, I like Umbreon a lot. Like it depends on the day, but those are probably my main 3.
Yeah. As for me, my first Pokemon game, technically, was Pokemon Puzzle League on the N64. But as for mainline game,
Oh shit! Actually, you know what? Pinball. That was technically my first game, I guess. If you want. to
Yeah.
Nice.
It's actually kind of good. Kind of good.
but yeah, as for my first mainline game, I'm pretty sure I'm, if not the youngest, I know I'm younger than at least 2 of you. And yet still, my first game was a Gen 1 game because I was, say it with me, poor Pokemon Yellow, which kind of like the way Austin, you were like, I was just kind of walking around, not really knowing what I was doing. That's what Yellow was for me. It was me just walking and
Yellow.
every 3 steps turning around to make sure Pikachu wasn't sad.
I still like Yellow a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yellow's great.
But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and honestly, the fact that my first 2 games were Yellow and Puzzle League, and then because I was young, not really young enough to play the games by myself, and so the anime was such an introduction for me. That is why, like, you guys have seen me been emo this past year with like all the Ash stuff and him leaving. Like those 2 experiences of the first games combined with the anime being my bigger exposure into the world is truly why the anime's always held a special place in my heart. And is how I came to my favorite Pokemon, which I'll go there next. Is I've said a million times, of course, you guys know my favorite Pokemon's Elekid. That little short before Pokemon the movie 2000, when Togepi gets lost and the wild Elekid helps them. I had
So
little
good.
cake toppers when I was 5 years old on my birthday cake.
Now that's a little man. That's a little dude right there.
He is just a little fella.
He's a little guy.
He's a little fella. He's a 2 foot tall fella, and he's just happy to be there. As for my favorite region, this is one that I think something finally clicked in me as an adult as to why. But my favorite region is Sinnoh, for one of the reasons being that was like the first one where I fully started to understand the mechanics of Pokemon, and to an extent team building, not in a competitive sense, but in like a less dumb kid way. More or less. But I think another thing that I don't think I realized until somewhat recently, but I definitely didn't realize as a kid as to why Sinnoh was always interesting and special to me is the story of Sinnoh is about like the creation. So essentially the god Pokemon, and this idea of religion and all that stuff. And it was all, a lot of it was in the lore happened in Sinnoh or around Sinnoh. And my parents are from the Middle East. And so like, not to get into big religious discussions here, but like my family is fairly religious. And so as Christians, again, my family more so, just growing up in that area of the world, it means something very different to like other people that I've met. And so like, I don't think it's something I realized as a kid, but as I've gotten older and like viewed places my parents grew up, it was like, oh, I think that there's like this weird sense of like comfort that I didn't even realize.
That's very, very cool. I hadn't thought about that. Also, it's like you mentioned like team building and stuff. Like I'd argue that like to this day, like competitively, like Gen 4 was one of the most like interesting in like all of Pokemon.
Yeah, the way the
physical
special split,
and,
I was gonna say that.
all of like the new evolutions to older Pokemon, like just
legitimately a game changer with the physical special split.
Yeah,
for real.
I mean, and it's such a massive moveset update too. Like I think that was the most fun I had like on the more like serious end of Pokemon was Gen 4.
I've never been like super competitive Pokemon. Like me playing Pokemon, I'm just living in the world. You know what I mean? Like I understand how most of it works, but like I've never genuinely sat down and being like, how should I strategize like the best? Like,
I've started.
I can. I've never done that once.
In a playthrough, I don't do it because like I can't control the EVs I get in a playthrough because I can't choose who I have to fight. And so I just more go, well, is this Pokemon more physical or more special? Let me try to lean towards moves that support that.
I'm like, who looks cool?
Oh yeah, and I mean, in game, like it's they're not difficult games, like really. So like it's you can just kind of have fun with that. Funny enough though, it was shout out to Game FAQs when I was looking for like something on Pokemon Red one day, and I saw like this guide to competitive Pokemon in Red and Blue, and I got so invested that like it opened up the world of Smogon for me, and then I jumped in, and that was like right as Gen 4 was hitting.
Okay.
And, and so that's what got me into it.
Gen 1 competitive. That's
it's wild.
You use Alakazam, Snorlax, and Tauros and Persian. Those are the only four you need.
You basically just needed something fast because that's how you got crits.
Yeah, and then like Persian could use Slash, which was also higher crit, and its speed was super high, and it was normal. So it was all fucking broken. But we're not here to talk about broken OU from 1996. We're here to talk about our dream Pokemon game, and I'm going to be starting us off today with my dream Pokemon game, which I'm very excited. I've been going back and forth to this set of notes that I have in front of me for like a month now, just adding to it, explaining things better. But like, fair warning, guys, I use some words that gamers don't like to hear, but like, it's not scary, and I'll explain it. Because what I have here, I think, with my dream Pokemon game is the definitive Pokemon game, kind of the Pokemon game to be all of Pokemon. I think the best way I can describe what I have here is I have the Assassin's Creed Infinity of Pokemon, but unlike Ubisoft, I can describe what that means.
Not an NFT, for sure. Not an NFT.
No, definitely not an NFT. I say this half jokingly, almost considered that in a certain way. But no, what I have here, I think, is a game where all of Pokemon can continue to build through. And my whole goal, I guess, going into the game that I'm about to describe for you guys is that it is Pokemon, like the idea of the world of Pokemon is what I want to exist. I'm trying to make it feel lived in. Mm-hmm. So just reading what I have, my dream Pokemon game is a live service. That's one of the scary words. Game. That allows you to explore the entirety of the Pokemon world, including regions from side games. It allows players the option to be more than just trainers who battle, attempting to accomplish a single region's gym challenge. It takes aspects from Pokemon Go, which, if you think about, is a live service game, which is why I'm not worried in using that description. And even the anime, it clears up or expands on some aspects of lore. And all of these parts will work in tandem for the best online capable gameplay experience. Some inspiration I have for the way I see this game are things like Destiny, Elder Scrolls Online, GTA Online, Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3, and even World of Warcraft. And what I mean by that is not that I'm saying this game should look like any of those games or play like any of those games. I mean, each of those games are in different things that they've set out to do. Successes in their own right in terms of how much there is to do, in terms of how regular content has been able to be put out. And for the ones that have more online features, I think we would all argue that as far as live service game goes, things like Destiny, WoW, GTA Online, and even Elder Scrolls Online are successes when you look at the bigger picture. So that's kind of
going for though, like just a success in terms of the bigger picture, or do you want this thing to be like the game changer?
Yes. Like what I mean is like I think that like one of the issues we have with live service games is that it seems that at a certain point you run out of content, but GTA Online turned 10 years old and people are still playing that like it's nobody's business. I mean, Destiny, we all laughed and they said they had a 10-year plan and we're kind of seeing it. We've seen it through at this point. There's what, a year left in this 10-year plan?
This February.
This next one is the final one.
See,
yeah.
and so
the 10-year, yeah.
Final shape.
And going back to Pokemon Go, sure, not everybody's playing it like it's July 2016 again, but I mean, Hillary Clinton was playing it then. You know what I mean? Like as far as people who care about Pokemon playing Pokemon Go, they've been able to regularly keep some types of events and additions in a way that has kept an audience. And so what I'm
felt that live Pokemon was one of the few IPs that could pull off live service. I've always felt that way.
Yeah,
and that does not mean you can just drag and drop. Like it has to be done right. And I really think it would have to be the Pokemon company reaching out to someone entirely different. It cannot be Game Freak. Like I love Game Freak, but like
Game Freak would not be able to do it.
Sometimes I don't love Game Freak.
And so what I have is I think I've explained this in a way that I think live service can work. Where extra content is coming from and what the gameplay style will be that will make people who prefer a more solo experience. Because I made sure to keep putting the idea of a solo experience being possible throughout this entire idea. But I also do like the idea of I don't know if this would be like an actual function or more just agreed upon, but like the idea that you are only playing this game when your friends are online to make it feel like you're all telling your own narrative in the world of Pokemon is something I like. I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3 yet, but I know it has like a co-op campaign version. Does that only work if all of you are online playing as though it was a D&D campaign?
No, it essentially whoever creates it sort of like hosts like the save file. So there's essentially like one person that owns like the Baldur's Gate 3 like save file, and they're the one that has access to it. So if anyone else wants to play, like that one person needs to be there. But
Gotcha.
Otherwise, as long as that one person is be there, any combination of up to 4 people can be a part of that. When the other players aren't there, the rest of the party controls whoever's not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you come in with your player control or your players, or do you come in as like the named NPCs or whatever? You know what I'm talking about. Like
you can create your own characters. You can everyone can still create their own character, but that character essentially like lives in the save of whoever like created the file. So if for instance, I've got a co-op campaign with a buddy of mine, and his save file is there. I still created my character when I came in, but he can continue if he's like, hey, do you want to play tonight and get further? I'm like, I can't. I was like, feel free to go ahead and push it forward a bit. He can still control my character on his save file, but I can't access that game unless he's in it. Because he's the host.
He could just leave your ass somewhere. Like,
yeah,
nah, I'm done with it.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. He could kill me, have me jump off a cliff for sure.
So yeah, levels of detail as to how some of this stuff would work in like that level of schematics of like, well, it only works in this person's. Like, I haven't gotten into that. I'm again more talking bigger picture as to what I would want the game to be here. So I'm kind of going to break down what I mean piece by piece. So open world and fully explorable. So by that, I mean trainers will be able to travel between every main region, Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, Galar, and Paldea, as well as regions from other games like Fior, Almia, and Oblivia from the Pokemon Ranger games, the Lentil region from New Pokemon Snap, Ransei from Pokemon Conquest, Ferrum from Pokken Tournament, smaller places such as the Sevi Islands, and even anime-specific locations, specifically things like
Orange Islands.
Chris, let me finish.
Please tell me the Orange Islands.
I have things like Decalore, which is a bunch of islands from the Black and White anime, which kind of was the anime's version of getting the older Pokemon into Unova. And yes, for the first time, the Orange Islands are officially canonized, and pink Pokemon, as well as the Crystal Onyx, are officially alternate forms of those Pokemon.
Nice.
So this is what I mean by I kind of want to clean up the lore a bit. Austin and Alec, I think around last year, we did a podcast where I talked about the canceled season of Power Rangers Hexagon, which was going to be like this way to clean up a lot of Power Rangers lore for 10 years. I found ways to do that. What?
I said I vaguely remember this. I don't remember it very well.
We talked about animals and butts. Keep
Austin's
that in
like,
mind.
What the hell are you talking about?
Every podcast. What are you talking about?
No, with the
he's
pink.
not wrong.
Yeah, I'll send you the social vid later. Everybody can go look it up. But yes, so I've put in here ways that I would want to I think would be really interesting ways to clean up or expand the lore. And there's also bigger stuff about this every region that I haven't mentioned yet that we'll get to later. But the story, what was that?
I have questions. Do you want me to wait until the end?
Let me do this next part and then we can do questions. Cool. So the story region behind this openness is what I call a new initiative from the Pokemon leagues and the Pokemon labs to encourage travel, not just for trainers, but all careers. So I say this some sort of initiative, I guess policy, exchange student program, this idea that all these Pokemon leagues are going, let's bring people from all over and let them go anywhere they want to better enrich the world. And something I didn't mention, or a side region I didn't mention yet, is of course the Ore region from Pokemon Coliseum, which is going to be very important to some of the online aspects of this game. But in the story, the Ore region will take place a few years after the events of XD Gale of Darkness, and the biomes have recovered, so the native Pokemon from the Ore region have returned. I would want this Pokedex to be a lot of cut evolutions or cut Pokemon designs from the past that have leaked, because it would imply that the Ore region was real. The events of Coliseum and Gale of Darkness happened, which ruined the Pokemon that were found there, and now they're finally returning back to this habitat. And so that means that within this super expansive live service, games as a service, all these words that people don't like to hear, there is a brand new Pokemon experience built in, because you could choose to be a trainer who only fights through the Ore region for the first time.
Is that like the season 1? Sorry, I need to
so in my head, season 1 would be like all the regions would be there from the get-go, because I don't want to limit all the already existing regions would be there from the get-go, because I don't want to limit kind of the options that people have, whether that's in terms of the where they would like to start, which region they'd like to play through first, the story they're trying to tell. But I did want to put in a brand new experience for people who want to try to get that.
So my thought is just because I'm just thinking kind of in terms of like Destiny, just kind of how that worked. If you're putting all the regions in at the beginning, what are your expansions going to be? How are you going to keep it live service?
So that's stuff that comes in later.
Gotcha.
That I'm mentioning later, but that's a good question, because I do get what you mean. Like, I have ways that I think I would keep the game existing and going.
That's part of the
questions too.
Because that's something with these live service games is you can kind of change the maps and like change locations a little bit, from events that happen, but they're still the same map.
Yeah.
So that's what my thought is. If you're putting everything out there right at launch, I feel like that's people are still gonna. It's gonna be a lot of content. Don't get me wrong, but people are still gonna churn through that content.
Yeah, I would honestly be against having everything right at the start.
I don't know if I would have everything as much as everything that's already existed.
I still think that's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
that's massive.
Yeah.
This file is like 1 terabyte. Like it.
It's a half a Warzone, we call it. So what I mean by more than just trainers is this game will allow players to take on other professions beyond trainers who battle. Because trainers both means everybody who has Pokemon, but also trainers as in people who battle Pokemon.
So sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting. You can do all of them at once, right? You don't have to like choose one at the top and be like, I'm gonna be a ranger, and then you have to do that storyline. You can kind of do all of them as like a quest line.
So I get into that in a bit.
Okay, cool.
So
I'll shut up.
that's fine. So Pokemon battles would still be the combat, quote unquote, of the game. But it does not have to be the only thing that counts towards the player's growth, is the way that I think of it, is that there would be different paths for most, if not all, of these classes. And I also got into the question of subclasses as to whether they should exist or if that should maybe be optional quests under the main quests for these classes, or if it should be more self-imposed rules, or if there's a balance of all of that depending on how specific of a subclass or narrative we're trying to get into.
It gives me like very like Elder Scrolls-y kind of vibes, right? Where the idea that's like you can go be part of the Thieves Guild,
level up skills,
the Fighters Guild. You can do all these things. Like the thing you specialize in is the thing that you put time into, right?
In a way,
I know you said that battling is the only type of combat. I really want to just be able to deck someone.
Just be like Ash when he tried to throw hands with Mewtwo.
With Mewtwo, yeah.
Just bring it on, bitch.
The steel chair is super effective
against rock types.
Yeah. So, like, I guess the example I give is like, rather than there being a gym leader subclass, maybe the person can choose just to use certain types. Like, that is not something I've like decided in stone. If I want to be like, should you have to declare I am a person who specializes in this type? Can you declare it later? Because like, you know, like in my head, I would imagine a character I make to want to explore the world of Pokemon any way that they saw fit, and then at the end choose their type specialty. You know what I mean? It's almost like taking your general studies and then focusing in on what you want to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the idea of it being a little bit more like, you're not married to it if you say you want to be a specialized person of this type. That could just be like its own separate quest line. And that's why I think the balance would be somewhere between to make the narrative that you want to tell be able to exist. And also what you're saying, like, can you do all of them or multiple of them? I like the idea of there being a hobby option, which allows you some benefits of another class. But not every class would be a hobby per se. This is one of those aspects where like I haven't gone into the nitty gritty of like how classes and subclasses would work, but I like the idea of these being your options. Obviously, first we have trainers, and you have type specialties, whether if you want to go like the gym leader Elite Four route, or even a style specialty. Maybe you want to specialize in double battles or sky battles or trick room battles,
battles.
Well, yeah, like that sort of thing also like almost already exists. Just if you look at the NPCs in the game, right? Like you have like your bug catchers, your vipers, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And make it like beneficial to them if they want to go that track. Like,
and I want you guys to keep those ideas in mind of like people in the world already kind of exist as these things. Then of course
you could be a youngster and just have Rattatas all day
because shorts are comfy and easy to wear. Of course, then there's
don't be afraid of the fear Rattata.
True. Fear Rattata will fuck you up.
And it just makes you like spawn a Rattata once a day.
a Rattata in the top percentage of all Rattatas.
Yeah. Fucking IV.
Sometimes there's a
bread.
rare shiny Raticate. It's crazy.
So obviously on top of trainers, I also have rangers, and rangers I've also put in for, I guess, their subclasses. There would be like wildlife safety, the things you see in the games where it's like a tree fell down, we'll get a fire type to burn it, or there's a forest fire, we'll get a water type to take care of it. Or there's of course crime stopping. The games have kind of done both, but it always felt like those were two different duties. And so I like the idea of them being different specialties. Of course, then there would also be coordinators, and they would have 5 subclasses between cool, beauty, cleverness, toughness, and cuteness, all the different contest styles. And then there would be researchers. Now, I don't believe any of you have really kept up with the newest Pokemon anime, Journeys, right?
No. Okay. A single second.
So in Pokemon Journeys, there's something called Project Mew, which is what you actually find out that Gary Oak has been like up to as he's grown up and strayed away from simply battling. And the best way to what was that, Austin?
Sorry, I know you said Gary Oak, but I thought Professor Oak. I'm like, how old is this man? This dude is like 97 years old.
No, and what I meant by adventure researchers is Gary is not a scientist in a lab. He is somebody that is using all the knowledge he's had about Pokemon, whether that's their abilities, their types, their strengths, their weaknesses, and uses that to like do the type of like adventures that like young scientists try to do, of like going up to like the snowiest Arctic region, knowing you have to brace the elements, but because there's like a temple for one of the Reggies. Like this is something that Gary gets into, and they kind of use those medallions as like they have in Pokemon Go to like mark your progress. And Gary's pretty high up, but he's not the highest too. And Ash's new companion is like trying to get into it, so he has stuff that he has to do to prove himself. And so I think that would be a really cool way to do researching, where it's more of this like you're after the thrill and the adventure, and you're using smarts and strengths in different ways. It's very
like treasure hunting in a way.
Almost, yeah.
Can you be Team Rocket?
I did not put that as an option just because, like, if PvP is an option, like,
this game.
I don't know, man. I don't want to put PvP in. Like, people are like, oh, those fucking kids in GT Online just constantly shoot you and steal your money. What if I decide to be a Team Rocket grunt for a Twitch stream, and I'm not realizing I'm causing a child in Wisconsin to, like, cry their fucking eyes out?
You can only be Team Rocket in a specific region.
The Rocket region.
Or you just make it work like the Souls games, right? To where somebody has to enable like invasions, like PvP.
Yeah,
gotcha. We could. I'm not against the idea of letting people be bad.
Even GTA
let me rob
Online,
someone at gunpoint, right?
Or even
this Pokemon game.
GTA Online even has that passive mode.
Yeah,
where it's like you can still be online and see everybody. It's like they just can't interact with you.
And then so on top of the adventure researchers, there are just the more traditional scientists, boring dudes, white coats, graphs paper.
Professor Sycamore is not boring.
Professor Sycamore hot. Listen, all the professors from Black and White on, for whatever reason, hot as fuck. Right. I don't know what hormonal thing happened in the Pokemon Company around 2010, but they were like, yo, all professors, you're gonna want to fuck them. Like
Professor Kukui.
Bro, he didn't wear a shirt.
I know, dude.
Sycamore was like, "Oh, I am French. I show a little bit of skin." And then Kukui was like, "Who needs a shirt?"
What is jacked out of his mind?
Yeah. In the anime, he has a baby. So like, confirmed. Fuck. Professor Kukui fucks. Dude.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Kukui going Kapui. You know what I mean?
In the Pakuki, you know what I mean?
Oh no!
Remember how he said he'd have words that we didn't like?
There it is. I found it.
But yes, so I also like the idea that the scientists can choose to study things that other professors have, like Pokemon eggs or Pokemon habitats or Pokemon evolutions, but also offshoots of that, where maybe somebody under Professor Birch, who studies Pokemon eggs, decides to study baby Pokemon because they only come from, you know what I mean? Like, I want to, again, take what we have and expand it, but have it make sense in terms of what these different things they can study are.
Can I be cooking picnics in this game?
Oh, listen. We got doctors and breeders. Don't really have subclasses for those. Those are just things I know are careers. After that, we got cooks, 2 subclasses: human food, Pokemon food.
What if I wanted to be
Pokemon into food?
What if I
that's just canon at this point. Like, they don't like to talk about it, but like they kind of imply it.
Make it a quest.
Slowpoke Tales.
Yeah, make it one quest where you have to hunt down a Slowpoke and just murder him. Just go hard on.
Like Legends Arceus, where you have like a straight up bow and arrow.
What if I wanted to be like hit Pokemon character Tracy and be a Pokemon sketch artist?
Let me get through the rest of the list and you'll see where. Because I do have Pokemon photographers, this is one of those where I go, that could be a hobby. And I don't have any specific subclasses or outs, but I imagine there would be goals for rare Pokemon spiting, rare Pokemon spottings, a Pokemon in their natural habitat, battle photography, contest photography, the way that I have a friend who does photography for people's headshots because they're in the acting world. I have another friend that does photography for car magazines. Like, within photography, there's so many things that you can choose to take pictures of. So I like that being kind of the subclasses for photographers.
Now, would you report to like a J. Jonah Jameson? And get your
I want pictures of Pokemon Man. I kind of imagine Professor Oak and his somehow I study Pokemon and everything about them. I'm also an art critic. Like, this one's all right.
I demand pictures of Spinarak.
Make the critic be like Brock because he has no eyes, so he can't see it anyway.
Yeah, it's like they have to just be like, this photo's really good, I promise you.
You can't fucking see shit. You got no eyes.
I also have engineers, which the really specific subclass for, but it's something I think we've seen hints of in terms of characters like Sophocles or even people that work for the Devon Corp in Hoenn. And then in the newest anime, there's like an engineer that makes the whole flying ship they're on run. So like I think that there's a possible story that could be told there with engineers. I also have farmers, both Pokemon farmers and berry farmers.
So does Pokemon Stardew? Is that how you envision that?
Basically, or just like the berry mini game, but like turned into its own thing. Which
or Kurt from Johto.
Yeah, with the apricorn turning them into Pokeballs, absolutely. I also have detectives because remember the character Looker from Platinum that then showed up. He's from the International Police, is what they call it. I think that would be really fun. So when I said, basically, that's basically what it's supposed to be. But yeah. When I wrote detective, I was thinking him, not Detective Pikachu. But if they find a way to make that work, fuck it. Like,
just have like a Detective Pikachu subclass in there. It just shows up. You have like one quest line with him, and then you never see this talking Pikachu again.
I also have a collector hobby, and that can be whatever you want it to be. Because under the collector hobby, you could try to catch them all. You could try to catch shinies. You could try to catch specific forms, like everybody who wants to catch all the Vivillon forms, or even just Pokemons of one color. Because that was a thing in one of the anime episodes where they come across a dude who just wants to catch all the blue Pokemon.
Wasn't the villain in 2000 a Pokemon collector? And that was the reason he was going after the orbs on the 3 islands?
Oh, yeah.
Sure, yeah. We want to be evil collector.
He's like, it all started with a Mew card, which I own. Where is it?
I have one somewhere. Who knows where?
Yeah, he's like, it all started with a Mew card, right?
Yeah.
And then Mew was like, I have that! Holy shit!
And then so the last two I have is a Pokemon performer, which is different than a coordinator technically. And those could be things like acting or dancing would be the subclasses. And then go in a corner. Anyway, Chris, you asked about Tracy. Now, Tracy is not actually a Pokemon sketch artist. His official title is Pokemon Watcher, which is our last class that I put in, is Pokemon Watcher.
I just like to look at them.
Yeah, I just think they're neat.
I just think
I like to look at Gardevoir.
So
I don't know why.
Shut the fuck up,
Austin.
5 minutes, you know. Go sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
You think I'm gross? I only want to fuck humans.
I didn't do anything. You guys are implying. I'm not implying it.
We're gonna start talking about Vaporeon coming out of that corner soon.
Oh my god.
Each of these classes will come with different perks and abilities that encourage online play in a collaborative way, but are not required to still allow for lone wolf players. So the perks that different classes offer, a lone wolf can accomplish just by going to NPCs. So the way I see this, things like daycares. Maybe if you're a Pokemon breeder, you don't need to go to a daycare. You can go to your friend who's a breeder or a doctor. Move tutors might be something that falls under scientist. Professors to rate your Pokedex and get those little upgrades. Making Poffins if you don't want to make them yourself and you don't want to go to an NPC. If you have a friend who's playing as a chef, or Pokeblocks, stuff like that is basically how I see the perks to encourage online play. Is make other players have the abilities that NPCs used to have.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It forces you to like actually mingle and
that's where that community aspect kind of comes in.
Exactly. And like, you know, maybe I have a squad I roll around with all the time, but Chris, I know that you're going as a chef and I need some Pokeblocks to make my Feebas evolve, and I know you're online. I go over to you and you can give them to me rather than me having to go 2 regions away to find the NPC who makes them. So like, I do want to feel the world feel lived in.
Yeah.
That's another class I didn't put in, but I think a premise would be good, would be based off Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and the new anime Pokemon Horizons, would be some sort of school option. The thing I'm torn on is if a student should be its own class, or if you should be able to be a student that is studying any of these.
And not to take it back to Elder Scrolls again, it almost reminds me of the what's the name of the fucking like wizard school in Skyrim?
Hogwarts.
Right?
Winter.
College of Winterrun.
Fucking Hogwarts. Whatever the hell is the name of it. I can almost consider that. I can envision that being like a
like a quest line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Winter Hold, I think. By the
Winter
way.
Hold. Yeah, that's it.
Gotcha. But yeah, so that's what I like. I do like the idea of you being a student.
I don't know.
Winter Hold. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
College Winter Hold.
And
I was
so
super confident the whole time. Yep.
I also wrote, all career paths would be encouraged to travel by establishing goals or missions to learn from mentors all around the Pokemon world. The most fleshed out of these obviously would probably be training, which the little concept I came up with is this: the Pokemon Worldwide Gym Challenge. So this gym challenge allows trainers to create their own gym league. While you can still choose to only go up against the Hoenn League or the Sinnoh, or like one specific league, but in this new, again, this initiative to like bring different regions together and make the Pokemon world more explored, what this would allow a trainer to do is basically create their own league based off all the gym leaders that are already there. The only kind of restrictions I have is that no type overlaps would be allowed. And 2 of the 8 gyms that the player takes on will be decided by I'm saying more the in-lore explanation rather than I guess what the actual code of the game is going to have, but based off like some sort of algorithm and opinion of other league officials who are kind of watching this trainer. The only kind of restriction is that your first gym can't be one of these that they pick for you. But I imagine like if you do your first 6, they'll be like, okay, you've shown strengths here and weakness there. Maybe you should take on this gym leader and that gym leader. And so it kind of gets a person to, gives them a reason to travel and take on different trainers of different difficulty, trainers they might have never, if your character's from Johto, there's no reason that they would ever reasonably fight someone from Unova, but maybe that's very important to their story. And again, kind of like that personal narrative is something I took a lot in mind when building this, because you guys know the idea of Pokemon D&D is what would get me to just never have a life.
I apologize. I gotta get up for a minute. Go on without me.
All right, no problem. Just trying to catch up to where I was. So after 8 badges are achieved, I imagine that there would be some sort of a conference, similar to how in the anime there's a conference before you can take on the Elite Four. Mm-hmm. Now, this is where I think one of my most interesting ideas comes into play, because I want to make the world feel lived in and feel real. And if you're going up against this new world where trainers from everywhere interacting with each other, you're going to come across a wide selection of different trainers with different Pokemon. And so for the conference that you would do before the Elite Four, while it would be NPCs, I would have trainers at different points in the game get registered. And so I'm fighting an AI opponent, but it's using your avatar and your Pokemon. So that way, maybe I go up against Alec, who's got a Poliwag and a Croagunk, but somebody else halfway across the world is going up against Austin, and he's got an Infernape and a Rhyperior. I'm just listing off anything I can, but you know what I mean? The idea that like you're not going to come across the same NPCs. You're in this world where it's so integrated. Everyone has a different team makeup, and each of those teams have different move makeups.
Like it's almost like the in Forza Horizon, they have your Drivatars essentially. Like
yeah,
you're not playing, but it's like it's kind of uses what team you're using at that point in the game.
Yeah, and so this kind of ability to see Pokemon anywhere in any region, because that person traveled from there, is something that I think would really make the world feel lived in. And it's something that I've appreciated in different ROM hacks and even different Pokemon games, where I just see a Pokemon that comes out of nowhere because they're trying to say this person is from somewhere else. Or like a small detail I always liked in the Sinnoh games is occasionally you'll run into trainers that have one of the starter Pokemon from that region, which is something I never noticed in other Pokemon games. And I was like, that does make sense, because if this is what trainers in this region start with, why doesn't everyone have them? So that would be the Worldwide Gym Challenge. Again, you make your own gym league with the exception of 2. You have a conference before you go up against the Elite Four. The Elite Four is also another one of those. You choose 2 and the other 2 are selected for you by your performance. And again, no type overlap in any of the 8 gyms or 4.
Now, the question I had, would it make sense to have the Elite Four of this kind of huge challenge just be the champions of other Elite Fours?
That's the Elite
See,
Four. Silly.
Something I thought of would, and I didn't write, but something that I thought of was the idea that the champion you fight would almost approach you, kind of like, this is the dumbest fucking comparison I can make, but almost like The Voice, where like you do really well and Lance is like, nah, come battle me, and Cynthia's like, no, you should battle me. Like, but the idea that the champions are like, I've seen what you can do. And again, how this is actually decided through the coding, because personality and this idea can only go so far in a game. But I do like the idea that it's like, there's they from what they claim is that there's like some science behind how we're getting you to choose the two that we choose for you. But I always like the idea of the personal approach of the champion coming to you, but I also do like the idea of like, having to fight for 4 champions instead of 4 Elite Four members. But then I feel like we're wasting all the Elite Four members. So it's one of those tougher things where I'd have to find a way. Like maybe the Elite Four members are mixed into the conference.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Austin.
How do you handle a rival? Is that just other people you play with? You can like label someone as your rival, and then I don't know, you get some kind of boosts for defeating them, or vice versa.
I'm gonna be honest, I did not even think of the rival aspect.
Gotta
unfortunately,
have a rival aspect.
Yeah, because to me, I always like to like growing up, I loved naming my rival after my cousin because he would play Pokemon alongside me, and it would feel like he was my real life rival. And I did that with one of my friends in the.
You didn't name him Poo Poo Pee Pee or whatever?
Yeah, second, third playthroughs.
Ass butt is usually what I go for. Yeah,
butt face. Yeah. Have I ever told you guys the story that I once looked at my cousin's Pokemon Crystal save file, and there was just a Sudowoodo nicknamed Mr. Tree?
You did tell me this, I think. So I mean, my idea is that you have like one like in-game rival that almost everyone has, like my blank does blah blah blah, did this blah blah blah, and then you also have like someone like on your friends list you can like label as your rival, and then I don't know.
I do like the idea of like the rival feeling real in a way. As for like NPC rivals, I like both having a friendly competitive rival and also an asshole rival. Like, I don't think it has to be one or the other. I'm more concerned. See, I've never been the rival has to be an asshole. It's just more I just want the rival to be a challenge. And like, I know I keep going back to Gen 4, but the rival in that game is not an asshole, but is legitimately a challenge at different points in the game.
I like it when they're an asshole, but
that's the part I liked in the Gen 2 remakes. Like there's a part where they actually give your rival in that game a bit of character, like towards the end.
Yeah.
Like you find out spoilers for what a 10-year-old plus game at this point, but you find out he's Giovanni's son. And
I mean, they hint at the characterization in the originals, because how did he give a Crobat if he couldn't love?
Exactly.
But yeah, so that would be the trainers. And then as for coordinators, which I think are the second easiest to expand on, I would just say that contest holds are starting to pop up in all regions, and in different cities in those regions for different ranks, for different contest subclasses. And I think that their contest coordinator gameplay could encourage Pokemon to level up but not evolve, to keep like the cute aesthetic of the base form Pokemon, but you want them to use shinier moves, so you level them up. And that'll come into some of the online functionality later. But remember what, like me saying, like people should still be encouraged to level but not evolve, and like all those and with those stats. I also think that Pokemon ranger stations would start to open up in all these regions as well. Maybe this idea that like, hey, you know, go full 90s camp with it. Be like, nature is everywhere and we need to fix it. So Pokemon ranger stations are coming to your neighborhood and Captain Planet and all that shit. You know,
like just kind of popping up throughout the routes and whatnot.
Exactly. And same with Pokemon Labs. Again, having to go back to the Pokemon Journeys as the example. The whole premise of Pokemon Journey is that Ash is living with this other professor as a research associate, but this is a professor in Kanto, and it's not Professor Oak's lab in Pallet Town. It's a lab in Vermilion City. So you can just say there's labs fucking everywhere studying an abundance of different things to kind of really build to this idea. Like the region doesn't have to have a singular lab with the one professor we know in it. That can just be like the head one.
Did you cover how you get your starter?
No, that's in the final notes at the end.
Oh, fuck me. All right, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so now that's kind of how I would break things down, make it open world. In the opening dialogue that establishes this new initiative and kind of breaks down the start of this game for us. There will also be lines of people saying that they thought that the new initiative would be canceled, with very vague lines talking about recent events or current events, about reports all over the world regarding shadow Pokemon. And others are saying that this is actually perfect timing for Rangers to be expanding. And this relates to the evil villain story, which not only connects back to the use of the OR region. The main story that encourages the online play capabilities will all be related to the evil team story, and by extension, the legendaries. And this is where I'm in my Duffy, guys. Like, this is where I'm hyped. So with this much more connected universe, the evil story is that Giovanni is attempting to bring back Rainbow Rocket from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where he gets all the evil villains. Except this time, he's recruiting one new evil team, Team Cypher, the evil team from Pokemon Coliseum.
Mirror B, let's go.
Yep. And the story mode would be done in missions that could be done in any region. So like, I just view generic villain hideouts, and after you do X amount, you get like, you find the notes that give you the lore you need to go on to the next mission. So that way you can bust hideouts in any region, and it's not forcing you to go from here to there just to kind of play through the basic games. And so in the first mission, we find a recording of Giovanni talking about shadow Pokemon and how he's been testing them in a different world. Now, here's where I need to use another scary word, but hear me out, because this is just something I have to explain to show how I got all the lore in this. We have to very quickly, talk about the Pokemon multiverse. I'm not trying to get into anything crazy, because technically every save file where you didn't name your main character Red and catch all 150 is technically a different multiverse. So there's billions of them. But I said that this game takes stuff from Pokemon Go. What's very confusing is that Pokemon Go is technically canon. And what they say in Pokemon Go is that they are interacting with our universe exists as a universe they're interacting with. I don't know how to explain it, but shadow Pokemon have only been in two Pokemon things: Pokemon Go and, of course, XD and Gale of Darkness. In Pokemon Go, shadow Pokemon are created by Team Rocket. And so the way I'm making this all make sense is the first recording you find is Giovanni saying he's been testing the methods to create shadow Pokemon in a different world, because he's one of the few characters that acknowledges the real world as a different world in Pokemon Go. Again, it's very confusing, but the lore can be that he's used our world / the Pokemon Go events as his test bed for what he's doing in this game.
So you're telling me Giovanni's just walking around over here and I can throw hands with him whenever I want? Is that what you're telling me?
Please don't talk about former President Donald Trump like that, all right?
What the fuck?
Get it? Because they're mob bosses? Fuck that dude.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, so that's kind of how I bring all of this back and all of this connected, is Rainbow Rocket is officially going after the Team Cypher. We say that what was happening in Pokemon Go has been Giovanni's test bed, and now he's bringing shadow Pokemon into the mainstream Pokemon universe, timeline, games, whatever you want to say. And so the online functionality would be similar to Dynamax or Terra Raids of the last two generations, but there would be some smaller ones that you could do on your own. And there would also be just some wild shadow Pokemon encounters that just as you're walking by yourself, a shadow Pokemon might pop out. It's the more strong Pokemon that have been shadowfied that are going to be like you need to get a group of people for this.
Okay, yeah, good. That was something I really want to ask about, because I mean, one of the big things of Destiny, right, is the shadow raids. Is raid? Sorry, I got shadow and then raid in my head. Is raids, right? And
Raid Shadow Legends.
Sorry, I fucking. My wife walked in to give me something at the same time, and I completely ADHD'd so hard. When you think of like big online like MMOs, like to get games like that, there's got to be some sort of like huge group in game activity, and I think like Shadow Pokemon sounds perfect for that.
And so the main story, if you follow just like the main evil villain story, it will eventually have you go to the OR region, and we'll find out that wherever the Team Cypher invented the technology for shadow Pokemon, again, trying to connect everything lore-wise as best I know with Pokemon lore, they would have actually, without been knowing it, accessing an ultra wormhole, but that ultra wormhole was going to a universe where Giratina won in the battle against Arceus, and that's what Shadow Pokemon are. They're Pokemon that have like the evil spirit from Giratina, which also kind of goes back to Legends Arceus. I don't remember the details on that lore, but remember those Pokemon were freaking out because the God Pokemon were all fucking around. It's all kind of like, this is where it all comes from, is that access to that world is what's brought Shadow Pokemon. And so it's in this timeline, it was able to corrupt all Pokemon, including legendaries. And that's how Shadow Raids come along, and also allow for separation of other stories that use that legendary, because I'm one of the people that think in real Pokemon lore, there's only one of each legendary. I do not understand how there's Galarian versions of the birds, because there's only one set of the birds. There's no alternate evolution or alternate version. So the way I see it happening here is when you take on a Shadow Lugia, because that one's not your universe's Lugia, the idea of catching and purifying it can work. But if there was an event with a non-Shadow Lugia, there would only be one at a time, because the implication it's the same Lugia every time. And then that would also go into probably maybe the hottest take here, where I would find a way to limit legendaries from being used in quote unquote canon aspects. So like online functionality battles with your friends is like a different thing, or VGC competitive. Like if the legendary Pokemon is legal in that, sure. But at the very least, like the main box legendaries, you can't not actually catch and use. When you come across a real non-Shadow one, it's like the Pokemon trusts you, and that's how you get it in your Pokedex. But it's not an official, I own God and I'm 12 years old.
Pokemon's like, give my good side. Here you go.
Yeah, basically. That's kind of how I see it, because I'm one of the people that like, they've like watered down what the word legendary means for Pokemon.
I agree.
But like for the big legendaries, I think there's only canonically one of each of them. You know what I mean?
I mean, wasn't there
I agree.
a Lugia in a show that had like a baby or something like that?
But that makes no fucking sense. Because the whole point of them not wanting to like oversaturate legendaries is that none of them can breed. So how the fuck is there a baby Lugia? Like,
I would also like to point out that just on the Moltres Zapdos Articuno point is I believe in the lore is that there used to be lots of them, and the three that we know are the only ones that are still kind of around. It's they're more so like endangered.
Yeah.
Which makes them legendary.
Yeah. This is one of my more.
Although
I could give or take.
The term legendary is kind of just thrown around these days.
Yeah. But either way, the shadow legendaries would be the legendaries that you can capture, purify, and keep. And I like the idea of, rather than having to capture multiple, every time you capture one, it just improves the IVs of the one you caught. To again kind of stick with the idea of like there's not hundreds of legendaries out there.
It is
so the more you go against it, the stronger it's getting.
It is sort of the Destiny thing though too. To like there are like missions like within the story of Destiny and stuff to where it's like I think of like the Witch Queen, and I know Alec would get this day, where you essentially like get a launcher by like this grenade launcher after you've defeated a boss. You turn it into this like hive worm, and you literally like shove this hive worm into a grenade launcher. It's like technically within the lore there should only be one of those, is because you're using like literally like the physical manifestation of the villain of the game to shove into your gun. Yeah. But like at the same time, like everyone has this grenade launcher though, because they've all played the game.
Fair.
You know,
one person got it, and then they invented a cloning thing, and then they handed it out one by one to every.
So I like that the shadow Pokemon kind of like existing like within like the multiverses, like everyone has their own version of it. That's a cool like lore way to keep it canon, but it still kind of gets around that sort of.
And that's kind of
all have like this one of a kind Pokemon. Like
that's kind of how I viewed it. Now the other thing about these shadow raids, and this goes back to what I said earlier about coordinators maybe finding a way to be encouraged to level up but not evolve, is these shadow raids would have things that can attract people of all classes, where maybe researchers want to see what shadow Pokemon like are up close. So they might not have the strongest Pokemon, but they go with people that have stronger Pokemon to check it out. Photographers want to get record of it.
Class.
And so in the other lore idea I have is during this this Shadow Raid event, in the lead up to the legendary coming out, shadow Pokemon of all types and levels come out to stop the player characters from doing this. And so if I'm playing a trainer that's like, I've got 6 Pokemon all level 100, I would be fighting scale to that. But if your character is a Tracy sort of person, you're like, my Pokemon are only like level 20, 30. The shadow Pokemon you fight are scaled to that, because the idea is the shadow Pokemon is throwing all that it's got at it, weak or strong. And so why would I waste mine on the weak ones? And that's how I see it, is that everybody will have a role to fill. And I also think that other trainer classes can be encouraged to have stronger Pokemon, in the sense that will let you better navigate the world. So like if you're, again, going back to a Tracy sort of person, or even going to a researcher in the more adventuring sense of the researcher one that we talked about, like the better you are knowing Pokemon battle mechanics, the further you'll be able to get in your own career. So there's a reason to have good, strong Pokemon, but you're also not hurt for playing a character that doesn't.
You're not shackled to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you go over the catching mechanic?
No.
Okay. It's very important for me.
I don't remember if I mentioned it, because we're getting towards the last section of my, so I don't know if I remember it, but if we don't, we could touch on it. So other future new content would be the opening of leagues in these new areas, and even others I didn't mention. And so I said that all the main regions and their leagues and the way their leagues are interconnected would all be open from the get-go. But year one can include things like the first league opening in any of the regions that only existed in the Ranger games, that never had leagues before. The Orange Island becoming its own league. And I like the idea of copying this idea from the show of like, a league isn't what we think it is. So maybe there's different tests, kind of how they did with Trials and Alola. But Pokemon Island from the first Pokemon Snap, that's just one little volcano. What if that was like a 8-person battle tower where it's kind of like a boss rush of gyms, but the gym leaders aren't as hard as a regular gym leader, but you can't heal in between. So like kind of changing the idea of what a league could be. Or maybe
Gym leader Castle from Stadium.
Yeah.
So maybe things like Decalore gets a league where it's not type specialties, but in the first gym is double battles, the second gym is rotation battles, kind of changing this idea of what a league could be. And that's the different content I see happening, is in the areas we haven't touched on. Because other examples I have are things like White City from Pokemon Stadium 2 becoming a city-sized battle frontier. And this is something I think I put lower, but I'll mention now. Pokemon Masters EX, the mobile game, that region becoming the site of the new Pokemon World Tournament from Black 2, White 2. Yeah. Because that's kind of what the point of Masters is anyway. Yeah. So using these regions to hit on ideas that Pokemon has done before. And then this is other things I have that could be new content. Or I'm using the word new here loosely, and you'll see why. Mm-hmm. One, this I heard about this years ago, and I thought this should have been DLC for Let's Go to make it stand out for Kanto games. But the Lost City of Kanto. Have any of you guys heard of this?
I have, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the original beta drawings for the map of Red and Blue, as well as when you look at like the list of flying locations, there's a city that looks like it's in the middle of the ocean, and there's like another location that you could fly to that was never used in the games. And what people think is, there was a city that you were supposed to go to between Vermilion and Celadon that would, one, give an actual use to the St. Anne rather than it just taking off without you, and would make getting to Celadon much more streamlined. But people think that at some point in making the game, they had to cut that island and make you go all the way around, probably because of cartridge space. So I like the idea of this lost city becoming some sort of side mission or quest line that you could follow. Mm-hmm. Other stuff, Johto, kind of like, I don't know if this is getting too much into Pokemon politics, but Johto getting its own Elite Four in League and kind of separating from Kanto and becoming its own region that has its own Elite Four rather than sharing it with Kanto's. Kalos getting all the cut Pokemon Z stuff we never did.
Yes, please.
The power plant. Core. Like, come on.
And as for the stuff that is not new, but would be new to this version of Pokemon. All modern remakes of their special events, Faraway Island to get Mew, the Eon tickets for Latios and Latias, the Azure Flute to get Arceus, make those timed events that, again, can be done solo or as a group, but would encourage people to go to the regions to get the legendaries. And rather than these legendaries encounters being handed to you, like you just go to Faraway Island, you walk around and Mew's there, let there be maybe a chase or a puzzle or something that makes that experience memorable, but again, doesn't have to resolve just to battles.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to call them raids because I don't want the emphasis to be fighting legendary Pokemon either, but more of an encounter with a legendary Pokemon.
Sure.
But I do think that the Mewtwo event would be the most in-depth look game-wise at what Team Rocket did when they created Mewtwo and what they do to him after, kind of like they touch on in the movie.
Oh, okay.
So that
was
would-
one an in-game event. That is the movie, right? You get an invitation to this island, and then like you're trying
pretty cool.
you're fighting
That'd be
Mewtwo,
cool.
and he's like stealing your Pokemon out of your inventory, like
even-
fighting shit.
One of the raids could be just going through Cerulean Cave, and then eventually you get to Mewtwo at the end.
dude.
All right, and then here I have just other changes I'd mentioned that aren't tied to anything I said, and then you guys can talk about my idea, ask me questions. Mini games is what would become EV training because that feels like you're actually training your Pokemon in something specific. And vitamins would be used to fix IVs because bottle caps don't make any fucking sense. If IVs are your DNA and EVs are how you're trained, EVs should be a mini game and vitamins can fix your DNA. I don't know why they're having bottle caps do it, but that's one of the changes I'd make. All right, so this is where I talk about how this is like my Assassin's Creed Infinity or the GTA Online comparison. This leaves room for other games to become more fleshed out classes. And what I mean by that is rather than making a Pokemon Snap 3, make the photography class a full-fledged game. And another, like, GTA Online has racing, it has shooting, it has golf. What else does it have? Like the golf minigame in GTA Online, I'm not saying it's PGA Tour levels of like accurate, but it's also more than just like a flash game.
Yeah.
That's how I see this, and that's why I say this is like Assassin's Creed Infinity, but I could describe what it is. You can make full-fledged games out of the different classes. Like, for all I know, Pokemon Cafe Remix can connect to this. And if your character from Pokemon Cafe Remix catches new Pokemon, they'll appear in your cafe, not everyone else's cafes.
Part of the cooking class, you're saying.
Yeah, like I really want this to be like a platform for Pokemon. And so like if Pokemon wants to make a rhythm game, boom, there's the dancing subclass. Like I know that sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but like I literally mean that.
I'm into the idea,
honestly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just read this exactly how I wrote it. Customization up the wazoo.
Yeah.
Like including the tech you can have, whether if you want Pokenav, Pokegear, Poketech, which Pokedex style you want. Boom. A partner Pokemon option to carry a Pokemon with you, but it's not part of the party, kind of like the partner Pokemon in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. How it's just always with you.
If it's done right, I can see it being.
Yeah.
I didn't love how it's done there, but whatever.
HMs are not done by wild Pokemon. They're done by yours, but they don't take up a move slot. Rather, they're passive abilities that Pokemon can do to make it feel like you're actually navigating the world with your own Pokemon, but you're not wasting a move on a move slot on a move that you don't want.
So it's still something that you have to like earn and gain access to, but it's also not taking up space.
Exactly. And I would like if it could also be done in different ways, like using cut. Maybe a fire Pokemon burns down that shrub, whereas Scyther would literally cut it, but a flying Pokemon might just lift you over it.
Yeah, I like it.
So, like, because I love the idea of, well, no, my Pokemon are helping me navigate through the world, but I also don't want to, use fucking Rock Smash when I'm level 70.
Yeah, you're stuck with Flash on Pikachu, and you're
Like,
like,
my other
dude, eat that bush.
Listen, my other way to get around it would be make the HM moves actually viable. Like, why does Rock Smash have shitty accuracy? Make it normal accuracy, give it priority, and boom, it's fighting type quick attack. I'm pretty sure I've said that before, but like that's a very easy example. Like, just make them viable moves. But I like the idea that these are more passive traits.
I'm with you on that.
All battle gimmicks will be available, but which are allowed to use can change based on different leagues or battle towers, like we talked about before. So maybe this idea of like Pokemon Island Battle Tower goes no gimmicks. Maybe a league in the Orange Island goes Terra only, nothing else. Maybe there's the Ultimate Show League, which is like, yo, use everything. We like, again, going back to me wanting to take inspiration from the anime. In Ash's final, in the Pokemon anime, in the final 8, they were limited to only using one gimmick at a time. But in the final battle, Leon goes, no, let's put on a show. Let's give them everything we've got. And like, because it was agreed upon, that's how they did it. Like,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go all out, baby.
Maybe I'm gonna save this one for last because I think it's maybe the most interesting and biggest change I have. But okay. Other stuff. Any first stage Pokemon can be a starter or single form Pokemon like Absol and Lapras. Because I don't like that the Pokemon randomizer goes, listen, either we can give you anything or we have to give you a 3-stage evolution line and nothing in between. Because I don't want a Nidoking as my starter, but I'm open to having like a Houndour or an Absol as my starter. But those aren't 3-stage evolution lines.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand not allowing like Absol or something like that, but
see the one
be, like limited to like stage 1.
The ones that like the big one that sticks out to me is like, would this be allowed as a starter? Is Scyther, because Scyther's stats are the same as Scizor's and Kleavor's, they're just distributed differently.
I would say no, but
yeah,
the door should be opened a lot more than it currently is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, an entire plethora of side missions that would make the world feel lived in, and it would be things that go beyond just battling or fetch quests. Possibly new gameplay mechanics could be introduced here with, and while some would be stagnant until you interact with them, like how Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, there's just a person standing there until you talk to them, you can help them. But others are dynamic, and I say this kind of like Marvel Spider-Man, where if you're just walking and somebody runs up to you, it's like, my Pokemon got lost, help me. If you don't help them, you have to hope someone else helped them, or in your head assume they found the Pokemon. But like,
oh, your Pokemon dead, homie, sorry.
No, but I like the idea of the world feeling lived in, which is why I want missions that are like dynamic. You have to do them kind of in real time, or you don't do them at all.
Like the kind of like the like you said in I'm thinking Spider-Man 2, like, you know, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2, like the I lost my balloon.
Yeah, I was thinking more like an Insomniac Spider-Man when like somebody steals a car, but both work.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, Pokemon Bank integration.
I wanted to bring up, like, I want side quests that are like more like the anime, where you're doing like I really, really, really enjoyed the Arceus side quest where like there's children being taken by Drifloons or whatever. Like, I really enjoyed like investigating that and kind of like coming to a conclusion on that. Like, I think the side quest should be more like that. Like, anime.
Yeah, like I kind of go back to, I want everything to feed into the idea that this feels like the real Pokemon world.
Mm-hmm.
When fully new Pokemon regions are made, and that's where I think this is also like this can be infinite. They could just kind of be like, oh, well, this new Pokemon League is open, has joined this initiative for the more open world or whatever. And that's how they can like just add in new countries without fucking up lore.
Yeah, they finally handed in the registration papers. You know,
yeah. Because like, how weird would it be if we woke up tomorrow and they're like, have you guys heard of like Surfmenistan? And we're like, what? They're like, no, that country that just showed up in the middle of the ocean. You're like, that can happen overnight?
That is always my big thing with Gold and Silver, right? Is that it's just like, hey, did you know there's this fucking brand new continent next door?
Yeah,
this whole time it was just there. Nobody talked about it ever.
Yeah.
As in game, it does not. I totally agree, but yeah, blowing your mind at the end is pretty fucking dope.
The other thing I think is that this style of multiplayer big events could still allow them to introduce new Pokemon and legendaries. Specifically, I think that it would be awesome if we got legendary Titans for each type. Because while I know some people have said, oh, they're meant to represent Stone, Ice, and Steel Age, they then added a normal type one in. And so I think it should almost be like, if Arceus is supposed to be like the god Pokemon, these Titans are like
the elementals.
Or like the closest thing I guess is like the lead gods of each type or saints of each type is like the closest, but like representatives of each type of themselves. And also, not only, again, cleaning up the lore, just let Eevee evolve into one of every type. Because you could say that there's something about Eevee's weird DNA that it could transform into anything rather than just specific ones. Specifically, Eevee gets a new evolution for normal type when it reaches level 100.
What's it called?
Eevemon.
Eevemon.
I don't know, man.
2E2V.
Or it's just it's an E where the V is and a V where the E's are. Viv.
I hate it. I like the idea, but I hate it.
Because I don't like that regular Eevee doesn't have the same base. Like all of Eevee's evolutions have the same base stats, but it itself doesn't. And I'm like, but what if somebody wants a normal type evolution?
Call it that evolution.
Yeah. As for, I guess, the biggest change I would make, and I don't necessarily. Again, I always go back to I want the Pokemon world to feel lived in, to feel realistic, and the battles have always been the thing where it's like it's just chess. There's nothing you could do. How can you sway it? How can you put like passion into the battles that can like change things last minute? And so a mechanic that, while I think there's a lot of ways I would change the battling system that I'm not going to get into because I'm not a game theorist, I can't talk about the actual balancing. I could just be like, this to me seems more realistic and more fun. One of the things I think that would be very interesting would be a clash mechanic like they have in fighting games, where after a move is used, the person on either end can choose to use this clash mechanic as a way to either get their Pokemon to perform a harder hit than normal, or maybe to get their Pokemon to like survive it out. And the clash mechanic would... Oh. All right, he's back. The clash mechanic would kind of like, I imagine similar to Injustice 2, where it's like you can choose to use all of it and like guarantee you win, but if they decide to use the next one, or if you want to use all of yours, you won't be able to. Chris, you know fighting games better than me. Is what I'm saying making sense?
I want to be 100 with you. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm gonna be. So I hear Clash and I think Injustice.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I mean.
That was not the most popular fighting game mechanic ever.
Okay. Maybe I'm misremembering it, or I'm getting confused with something else, but there was one where it wasn't so much a rock, paper, scissors system, but more of like you can choose to use different amounts of a meter, but if you use it all, like you're using it all. So do you take the gamble that the other person isn't?
I mean, that was how Injustice did it. Was
okay.
You spend a certain amount of meter, and whoever spent more essentially wins that clash. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a game theorist down to the balancing. I imagine that's something that could only happen within a certain time limit or maybe once per battle. But I do like the idea of like you shouting to your Pokemon to like put in a little more effort, whether it's on the surviving end or the attacking end.
Would that just not be a similar aspect to what the Legends Arceus kind of battle mechanic was? With like the fast strike or the power strike or whatever they were called?
True, I forgot about that.
It could also be tied to like friendship levels as well as though, because I mean,
true,
a Pokemon with a high friendship level can sometimes tank like a.
Which they already do in game, but I don't want to bring that into mainstream battling too much.
Which is back in higher resolution than ever. Like,
yeah, Austin just came back in 4K.
Sorry, guys.
No, you're good. But yeah, like. I don't want to bring that. He buffed it out because he loved you into mainstream battling, which is why I think attaching it to like a one-time use mechanic might be like a fun way to do it.
It's something that you can deploy like strategically. No, I'm into it.
Yeah.
I missed all of that. I'm assuming you can only use it once.
Yes.
Yeah, more or less. Another like other things I would want to integrate to battling is whether or not a Pokemon is floating, I don't think should be left up to their ability. I think that should just be a condition, the way making contact is a condition for abilities like Poison Point or Static, where it's like, hey, either Pokemon is floating or they're not floating, rather than having like the ability to levitate, because like there are Pokemon that are on all fours that apparently have levitate, or So you're like, okay, but then there's also Pokemon like Glalie and Magnezone that don't have Levitate, and you're like, it's fucking
Yeah,
levitating.
I can hit Coughing with Earthquake for some reason.
No, Coughing has Levitate.
Yeah, but not every Coughing has Levitate. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, true. So yeah, that's why I would make it like a condition. Like that's just one thing I would think of. And I also like there being other systems or items that give some sort of advantage to unevolved Pokemon. Maybe like Eviolite, but rather than defense, it's for attack or speed or other stats. Just to like again encourage the players who are taking classes where evolution for the strongest Pokemon is not the point, but they can still use their Pokemon in powerful ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically all 5 pages of those notes. That is my dream Pokemon game, guys.
Wow, that really.
I'm B100. I loved it.
Yeah. We should have saved yours for last because this. I don't know if I can top this.
I'm gonna have to go so much harder on my pitch than I originally was. Like, damn.
I'm glad that because I was worried that the focus on making it all open world, all live service would like turn off a lot of people. But I feel like Austin, you were saying, this is one of the few franchises that could probably get away with it.
I totally agree, especially if it's done right. Like I think yours would do it right. I volunteered to go next, and I'm regretting it for the record.
You guys will be fine. Don't worry.
Can I? Do we have any like closing thoughts? Or are we going to keep discussing?
If anybody had questions about mine, wanted me to expand on something.
I have no notes. Unless the mechanic is just a button, then I would be upset. But.
Damn this series for making me going to want games that will never exist.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you think I felt writing it?
I really, 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 really love like at least some remnant of the Arceus catch mechanic. Okay.
I do want the ability to throw a Pokeball without a battle to be there.
Yep.
But I also don't think I would go as far as to I didn't like in Arceus how like 90% of the Pokemon were aggressive. Like I'm like, you're a fucking Staravia. Like back off.
Yeah, like they can be like concerned and run away. Like that makes more sense.
Yeah, and so
I'm gonna bite your head off.
The idea of the Pokemon attacking you in the wilderness, I think, is something that I would make more attributed to the Shadow Pokemon aspect. Or maybe it's not a Shadow Pokemon, but it's not specific species so much that it's occasionally like it's kind of an RNG thing where Pokemon of some species are more aggressive towards you, and maybe that opens up a mission where it's like, oh, it's in pain, so you actually have to heal it or whatever.
Right, I gotcha, and that makes total sense. See, I think you're doing it right. I have next to no notes.
Yeah,
basically, I want to find a way to live in the Pokemon world, and this is the closest I could come up with to like a console MMO. I also don't know if this is going to be on the Switch or the Switch 2.
I don't think it can be on any of them, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. As for, I didn't describe the graphical style in here, but if I was to describe the way I'm imagining this, and I know this sounds like an oxymoron, I would have them go in the direction they're going in, but do it well, if that makes sense.
In my head, I was picturing Scarlet and Violet, but optimized.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or 60 frames, right?
Even more polished than that, but like I'm personally somebody who I do want to see the franchise continue to move into 3D. Which listen, I'm sure we're going to get dream games on this podcast that are 2D pixel art or are 2D HD 2D, which is listen, this is your dream game, but I think that 3D is like going to make it feel more realistic in the sense of not hyper realism art style, but scale. Let me see. Maybe not full scale when it comes to Pokemon like Wailord, but like
Hemorrhoid.
But like generally speaking, a relative scale existing and making it feel like when I walk in front of a legendary, I truly feel like it's a legendary that is in front of me.
With such an emphasis on like raids and stuff, like most legendary Pokemon are massive Pokemon, and I feel like if you're rolling up to Regigigas, like he better be the size of a building. Yeah,
exactly.
Like, I want that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen much of the game, but whenever I picture like this type of live service Pokemon game, I think of Genshin Impact. Like that's how I view the art style of this game.
I was thinking of using that as an example, but it was like I imagine it's slightly less cell shady.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But yeah, that's how I picture it.
I mean, like I was telling you guys before we started recording, I've may have been playing some Switch game on my PC. But I randomized it, and let me tell you, Scarlet, when you just see a whole bunch of other Pokemon that aren't supposed to be on that route just popping up everywhere, is so cool. So that's kind of what I picture this game being, is just, walking around seeing Pokemon kind of from all over the place.
Yeah, because I don't want encounters to be fully randomized, but I don't want most Pokemon to be limited to one area
What region they
either.
were originally located in.
Yeah, like I want there to be wiggle room. Maybe it also happens in waves. So like maybe one day you are in Hoenn getting a Tailo and a Swellow, but there's like some bird migration, and then there's two cannons and Pipepex there instead. Like maybe there's like what was that?
A lot of bird poop.
A lot of bird poop. Yeah, that's what the trees are for, to cache it.
And I mean, having access to so many of those regions, like it still makes sense that it's like, hey, if I want an Alolan Executor, I got to go to Alola to get it.
Well, and I also think the other thing the games are doing now in the DLC is that it's no longer regional, but biome evolutions.
Yeah.
So, like, really cool. Hypothetically, an Execute in the most tropical region of Hoenn should still evolve into the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But no, I went in making it. Would you guys believe me if I told you I made a map for this?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I did. I found a map of the Pokemon world on Reddit when I don't like some of this and edited it.
I expect this podcast again, but with a PowerPoint presentation.
I mean, listen,
if you just send it to Game Freak.
Yeah, if the Pokemon Company wants to invite me, I will make a presentation.
They'll just be like, haha, that's way too much work.
But you guys have so much money, and this will make you so much money.
That's also true, but they also don't put the work in on their current titles. So,
well, that's why also part of me is like, hey, we have so much Pokemon content to hold us all off for years. Mm-hmm. No Gen 10, no new, like, just focus in on the 1,000 and what is it now, 1,020, 25ish that you have, and just worry about those guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to tease my idea as we close out?
I'm gonna leave that up to you. We'll never be able to really get teases in the future, unless other than for these first few episodes where it's ours. So maybe that might be fun to do while we get this wonderful podcast started for everyone.
I came up with this idea during the podcast. I think I want to do a more secluded story about you being like an inside job person, like in Team Rocket.
Ooh.
Okay.
It's HD2D and it's more mature.
Ooh.
Okay.
And I was like, I need something more smaller scale so I can not, get blown out of the water by Jordan. So
if we're doing teases, I have had mine for a little while, not to step on your toes or anything, just because it's similar. It's mine is sort of like I don't like the term Pokemon for adults. Like, I've never been on board with like the dark, gritty, like
every ROM hack that's ready is like, my father left me, and I'm gonna say curse and smoke weed because I can. And it's like, it's r/I'm 14 and this is deep.
Yeah. My part of mine is just like a Pokemon that respects that a lot of the fan base is in their 30s. So
that's kind of what I'm going for too. But
yeah,
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Any other final questions, comments, things you guys wanted to ask about?
Did you go over the starter?
Yeah, any first stage Pokemon.
Right.
Is the way I described it.
I can get a Mankey.
You can have a Mankey. You can have anything that's not already evolved and isn't like wildly OP.
I don't know why I like Mankey, but I like Mankey.
He's just
it would definitely still be like a curated selection, but it would be much wider than 3.
Yeah, that's how I envision it as well.
I think there's a fan game where it is like you can pick any non-legendary first Pokemon and the start of that line, and like that's basically what I would do.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like that.
I'm into it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us for this very long first episode of Shared Screens Elite 4 / The Road to Victory. Like I said, if you have a dream Pokemon game, if you know somebody that has a dream Pokemon game, if you know somebody who's heard of Pokemon, send this to them. And if you want to be on, if you want to recommend somebody, have them message us on Twitter, message us on our email address, message us on our Discord. All of them are in the description down below. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Sorry I disappeared.